Chapter 10, Part C, Form, Meaning, and Use 2, Adjective Phrases. First, let's think critically about meaning and use. Read each sentence and the statements that follow it, and then check the correct statements. Number 1, the guy talking to the receptionist was rude. The guy was rude. The receptionist was rude. Which one describes the sentence? The guy was rude. The guy, which guy? Talking to the receptionist. This is an example of an adjective phrase. As you know, relative clauses are also known as adjective clauses because they modify nouns. Notice that we can say, the guy who was talking to the receptionist was rude. And now in this part, we're learning how to change the clause into a phrase. Remember, clause has a subject and verb, whereas a phrase does not. The guy talking to the receptionist was rude. Talking to the receptionist is an adjective phrase that modifies the guy. Number 2, go to speak to Tom Gray, chairman of the committee. You should talk to one person. You should talk to two people. You should speak to one person. Which one person? The person named Tom Gray. What do we know about Tom Gray? He's the chairman of the committee. If we had a relative clause, also known as adjective clause, we could have go speak to Tom Gray, who is chairman of the committee. Now we have removed the subject pronoun and the be verb, and we get just an adjective phrase, chairman of the committee. That's just one person. Chairman of the committee is an adjective phrase. It's a positive phrase, which tells more information about the person Tom Gray. Number 3, I'm wearing a necklace made in Brazil. I am from Brazil. My necklace is from Brazil. My necklace is from Brazil. I'm wearing a necklace that was made in Brazil. That was made in Brazil is a relative adjective clause with that as a subject, was made as the verb, and then in Brazil as a prepositional phrase. But we can omit the subject pronoun that and the be verb was, and we get the adjective phrase made in Brazil. I'm wearing a necklace made in Brazil. So in this chapter, or in this part of the chapter, we're going to take a look at the grammar of making adjective phrases from clauses with be. Always recall that there are many online practice exercises for you, waiting for you to attempt. All right, let's look at the first part of this. Only people who are on the guest list will be allowed to enter. Now, we may take away the subject pronoun who and the be verb are, and we keep the prepositional phrase. Only people on the guest list will be allowed to enter. Now we have on the guest list, this prepositional phrase. It's an adjective phrase that modifies people. Which people? Only people on the guest list. The therapist treated my muscles, which were stiff from lack of use. We can take away the subject pronoun which, the be verb were, and we are left with the adjective phrase stiff from lack of use. This phrase modifies muscles. The therapist treated my muscles stiff from lack of use. The next sentence. This computer is perfect for someone that is working at home. That is the subject pronoun. Is the be verb. Now we are left with a continuous verb, working at home, and that modifies someone. This computer is perfect for someone working at home. The thief used a credit card that was found on the street. We can omit the subject pronoun that with the be verb was, and we end up with the passive part, found, that's the past participle, a passive phrase, found on the street, modifies the credit card. The thief used a credit card found on the street. Alan Tam, who is the CEO of Dynamics, is a billionaire. We can take away who, which is the subject relative pronoun, and is, which comes from the verb be. And then we end up with a noun phrase. And this noun phrase modifies the person called Alan Tam. We can call this noun phrase an appositive because it gives additional information. Notice it's non-restrictive because we already have Alan Tam, the person known by name. It's already specified by his name. Alan Tam, comma, the CEO of Dynamics, comma, is a billionaire. Period. So, to go over the grammar part again, subject relative clauses with who, which, or that can sometimes be reduced to adjective phrases in order to make the language less wordy and more concise. You cannot reduce object relative clauses to adjective phrases. So make sure you understand the relationship of the words to each other in order to omit just the subject but not the object relative pronoun. This is incorrect. That's the guy telling you about. You need to say, that's the guy I have been telling you about. That's the guy she has been telling you about. Adjective phrases are most commonly reduced from clauses with a form of the verb be and a prepositional phrase, adjective phrase, continuous verb, passive verb, or a noun or noun phrase. To reduce these clauses, omit the relative pronoun, only the subject relative pronoun, and the be verb. You cannot reduce a clause with be followed by a single adjective. So if you see a sentence, the therapist treated my muscles, comma, stiff. No, we can't do this because, adjectives, single adjectives, go before the noun. The therapist treated my stiff muscles. But if we describe the muscles or as being stiff from lack of use, that's an adjective phrase, and that can go after the word muscles. When be is followed by a noun phrase, it can only be reduced in non-restrictive clauses. Okay, you've got to remember this rule. This is non-restrictive clauses, with the commas around it, and then it becomes an appositive. So an appositive is a phrase that gives more information about a noun. It's not essential, non-essential, non-restrictive. John, a relative of a staff member, can use the facilities for free. John, who is a relative, so we can take the who and the is away. And now we just have the noun appositive. John, comma, a relative or staff member, comma, can use the facilities for free. But we cannot do that with a restrictive clause because if we started, for example, without a name of a person, without a specific person, and we said anyone a relative, that's no good. In order to make that one correct, we need to keep the relative clause structure. Anyone who is a relative of a staff member can use the facilities for free. So that one is no good because it's restrictive. So if it's a noun phrase, then we cannot reduce it unless it's to modify in a non-restrictive condition. Now let's look at adjective phrases from clauses with other verbs. For example, anyone who arrives late will be denied entrance. Can be changed to anyone arriving late will be denied entrance. There was a sign that warned us to leave the area. There was a sign warning us to leave the area. A meteor that weighs, a meteor weighing over 440 tons, could hit the Earth in 2120. My grandparents, comma, who knew the Nazis would soon find them, comma, fled to America. My grandparents, comma, knowing the Nazis would soon find them, comma, fled to America. Some relative clauses not containing forms of be can be reduced to adjective phrases. To reduce these clauses, omit the relative pronoun, remember it's only the subject relative pronoun, and change the verb to the present participle, that means to the verb plus the ing. But be careful, you cannot reduce a relative clause if it would change the meaning of the sentence. This often happens when the meaning of the adjective phrase is different from the meaning of the relative clause in the original sentence. Let's take a look at these examples. The man who jogs by your house is my uncle. The man who jogs. That's a habitual activity. The man who jogs by your house is my uncle. In the second example, the man jogging by your house is my uncle. Jogging by your house shows an action that is happening now. So that definitely has a different meaning from something like the man who jogs. That's habitual, but the man jogging by your house means it's happening right now as we speak. So be careful when you're changing a relative clause to an adjective phrase. It might change the meaning, and you might not want to do it then.